Someone is looking at a photo of you right now, not scrolling past it, not glancing at it in the casual and moving on form, of someone who sees a thing and continues without the thing producing a stop in the movement that was happening before the seeing happened, stopped on one specific photo in the specific and deliberate form of someone who found something in that photo that made the scrolling stop and the looking begin, in the sustained and zooming in form of someone who is not looking at the photo generally, but at something specific within the photo that the stopping and the zooming were both for, in the particular and consuming form of an attention that found something it was not expecting to find in the specific photo it stopped on, and that is now completely unable to move past what it found in the obsessed and staying form of something that has taken hold of the person who stopped and zoomed and is now in the consumed and unable to move past form of someone who is completely obsessed with one specific photo of you. This reading has 4 layers, and I need you to stay for all 4, because the 4th layer contains the thing that this person found in the photo that produced the obsession. And that is the most significant part of everything this reading is going to deliver for the specific person it found today, which is you. Welcome, my beautiful soul, and do not go anywhere. The 1st layer, and this one is about the photo itself, not which photo specifically, because the specific photo is yours to know in the particular and personal form of the image that exists in your life, but about what the photo contains that made the stopping happen and the zooming begin in the specific and particular way that this reading is going to describe layer by layer, in the peeling back form of something that has more in it than the surface suggests, when the surface is what is being looked at rather than the deeper thing that the zooming was trying to reach. The photo contains something that most photos of you do not contain in the same visible form, and I want to name what that something is in the precise and careful way that the naming deserves, because the precise naming is what produces the recognition that lands in the chest of the person reading this, rather than only in the mind. Whew. The photo caught you unguarded, not unguarded in the vulnerable or exposed form of something that reveals more than was meant to be revealed, in the intimate and private way of something that should not have been visible, but that the photo accidentally made visible in the captured and unintended form of an image that reveals what the subject was not aware of being revealed. Unguarded in the specific and extraordinary form of someone who was fully in the moment, the photo was taken in rather than in the posed and managed form of someone who was aware of being photographed and who adjusted their presentation accordingly, in the specific and composed form that most photos produce when the subject knows they are being photographed and produces the posed and managed version of themselves for the camera that is capturing them. This photo did not get the posed and managed version. It got the actual version in the unguarded and fully in the moment form of someone who was not performing for the camera because they did not know or had forgotten that the camera was there, and whose actual version was captured in that not knowing or forgetting in the specific and extraordinary form of someone who looks like themselves in the full and unposed and completely their form. That is rarer than people realize. In the images that exist of them, and that is the thing that made the stopping happen and the zooming begin. The actual version of you is extraordinary in the specific and rare form of something that does not require the management or the posing or the composed and presented exterior that most people bring to the camera to be worth stopping for, in the zooming in form of someone who found something in the stopping that made the continuing past the stopping feel like the wrong direction. The actual version stopped them in the specific and arrested form of someone who's scrolling encountered something that it was not equipped to continue past without the stopping and the zooming that the actual version produced in the person who encountered it in the photo that captured it, in the unguarded and fully in the moment form that this reading is describing as the first layer of what produced the obsession that this reading is about. The second layer, stay with me, because this layer is more specific than the first. And it is about what happened inside this person after the stopping and the zooming in the interior and building form of something that did not resolve itself. After the looking had gone on long enough to have normally produced the resolution of the attention returning to where it was going before the stopping happened. The attention did not return in the normally resolving form of a stopped attention. That has satisfied itself with the looking, and that can therefore continue in the direction it was going before the stopping interrupted the direction. With the specific photo that it stopped on, the attention kept returning. Instead, in the returning to the photo form of something that had not been satisfied by the first looking or the second or the several subsequent lookings that the returning produced each time the attention tried to move past what the photo contained and found itself unable to, in the specific and consuming form of an obsession that has taken hold of the person who encountered the actual version of you in the unguarded photo that this reading is about. Whew. I want to describe what the returning looks like from the inside of the person experiencing it, because the inside description is the most useful part of this layer for understanding what is actually happening in the interior of the person who is completely obsessed with one specific photo of you right now. they are in the middle of something else, an ordinary activity that has nothing to do with you or with the photo or with the stopping and the zooming. That happened when the photo was first encountered and the thought of you arrives in the uninvited and specific form of the image from the photo, appearing in the interior of the person who is supposed to be doing the ordinary activity that the thought of you has interrupted, in the arriving and uninvited form of something that does not wait for the convenient moment to make itself felt. And they go back to the photo in the opening the phone and finding it form of someone who has looked at it enough that the finding is immediate without the searching that first finding required, because the repeated looking has made the finding effortless in the specific and practiced form of someone who has been to the same place enough times to be able to get there without the effort that the first time required. And they look again in the zooming in form that the first looking introduced as the way of seeing the photo. That makes the actual version visible in the specific and zoomed in detail that the unzoomed version does not fully provide. For the person who has been looking in the zoomed in and fully there form since the first stopping happened and the zooming began, in the specific and consuming form of an obsession that is still active right now as this reading finds you. The third layer, and I need you to stay with me for this one because it is the layer that I almost left out before I decided that leaving it out would be doing you a disservice, in the specific and important form of someone who has information that the person reading this needs before what is arriving from the obsessed and photo returning person has arrived in the full and moving form of what the obsession is producing as its natural next movement. The third layer is about you and something I feel in your energy that I want to name directly because it has been sitting there in the quiet and rarely examined form of something that has not been given the full and honest attention it deserves from the person it belongs to, which is you. I feel a specific and quiet discomfort with the idea of being seen as desirable in the particular and honest form of someone who does not fully allow the receiving of the specific information that they are someone who stops people in the zooming in and unable to move past form of what this reading is describing as the effect the specific photo is having on the specific person who encountered it. Whew. The discomfort is not vanity aversion in the humble and not wanting to seem vain form of someone who deflects compliments because receiving them feels like agreeing with them in the self-satisfied form that the humble person does not want to be in. When the compliment is received, the discomfort is something more specific than that. It is the discomfort of someone who has not fully updated their image of themselves to match the version that the people around them and the person in the photo and the obsessed zooming person are encountering in the actual and fully there form of who you actually are when the actual version is visible in the unguarded and fully in the moment form that the photo captured. And that produced the stopping and the zooming and the obsession in the person who encountered it. The self-image is behind the actual version in the specific and updating needed form of someone who is more than they currently see themselves as being. In the interior and private assessment of who they are and what they produce in others, when the actual version is encountered in the unguarded and fully there form that the photo captured, the self-image needs updating to match what the obsessed person found in the photo, and that has been keeping them in the returning and unable to move past form of someone whose encounter with the actual version of you has produced the consuming and staying obsession that this reading is describing as the current state of their interior right now as this reading finds you. The fourth layer, the most personal and the most directly about what is coming from the obsessed and photo returning person toward the specific person this reading found, which is you. I feel a question forming in you right now as the fourth layer arrives. And the question is not what I think they will do. In the predictive and future telling form, that the question might sound like, when it first forms in the interior of the person reading this, the question is deeper than what will they do. The question is, why this photo? Why this one specifically? Out of all the images that exist of me, why did this particular one produce the stopping and the zooming and the obsession that this reading is describing, rather than any of the other images that have existed of me in the various and numerous form of someone whose images exist, without any of the others producing what this one produced in the obsessed and zooming person. I want to answer that question directly in the most honest form available, because it deserves the direct answer. This photo produced what it produced because it caught the version of you that you do not usually allow to be seen in the managed and presented form of what you show when you know you are being looked at, the unguarded version that was fully in the moment and therefore fully itself in the specific and extraordinary form of something that is rare, because the management is usually so practiced that the unguarded form does not often make it into the images that exist of you in the visible and available form that others can encounter and stop for and zoom in on and be completely unable to move past. The version that stops people is not the managed version. It was never the managed version. The version that stops people is the actual version the unguarded and fully in the moment version that the photo caught and that the obsessed person found when they stopped and zoomed in and are now completely unable to move past in the consuming and returning form of someone who found the actual version and who does not want to look away from it in the obsessed and staying form that this reading is describing as the current interior state of the person who found you in one specific photo and has been unable to continue past what they found. Now, what is coming from them toward you in the natural next movement of someone whose obsession has been building long enough to produce the specific and arriving form of something that cannot stay only in the looking. And that needs to move into the contact form of someone who has been in the obsessed and returning form for long enough that the staying only in the looking has become more uncomfortable than the moving into the contact. That the obsession has been building toward as its natural next form. Contact is coming in the specific and arriving form of someone who has been in the stopped and zoomed and unable to move past form for long enough that the natural movement is now toward the person in the photo rather than toward the photo itself in the obsessed and returning form that the contact is graduating from into the reaching form of someone who has decided that the staying only in the looking is no longer the available form of the obsession that has built enough to graduate from looking to reaching in the contact arriving form that this reading is pointing toward as what is coming for the specific person. This reading found today, I want to give you something. Before this closes, in the permission form that the self-image behind the actual version person specifically needs before the contact arrives from the obsessed and graduating person who found the actual version in one specific photo and has been unable to move past it in the returning and zooming form of someone who is now moving toward you. Permission to update the self-image. Now, before the contact arrives and provides the external confirmation that the self-image is behind in the specific and updating needed form that the third layer described as the quiet discomfort with the idea of being seen as desirable. In the stopping and zooming form, that one specific photo produced in the person who encountered the actual version of you in the unguarded and fully in the moment form that most photos do not capture, but that this one did. Update the self-image now in the interior and private form of simply acknowledging that the actual version stops people and produces obsessions and has someone returning to one specific photo again and again in the consuming and unable to move past form of an encounter with something, that the person who encountered it cannot look away from, because it is the actual version of someone extraordinary. In the unguarded and fully there form that was captured in one specific photo, that changed everything. For the person who found it, by stopping on it and zooming in and discovering what this reading is now confirming for you in the direct and honest form of something that has always been true about the actual version of the specific person reading this. You are protected and seen in the specific and zoomed in form of someone whose actual version stops someone completely and has them returning again and again to one specific photo of the specific person this reading found, which is you. Right now, reading this as the contact that the obsession is graduating toward is already in motion toward the actual version that the unguarded photo captured and that this reading has just confirmed is exactly as extraordinary as the zooming in and unable to move past obsession has been saying it is, in the returning and consuming form of someone who found the actual version and cannot look away. Take gentle care of yourself. My beautiful soul, someone cannot stop looking at you, and what they see is the real you, not the managed version, the actual one. And the actual one is the one that stops people